Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari 8-bit games, some which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today is one of the former. Today we're looking at Preppy, which was a 1982 release by Adventure International, developed by Russ Wetmore. And if you've been following the Atari A to Z website at atariatoz.wordpress.com for a while, you'll know that this is actually one of the first games that I wrote about on that site before we started making videos. So, Russ Wetmore, the creator of Preppy, originally worked as an author liaison at Adventure International, which was quite a successful company, largely built on Scott Adams' text adventures, hence the name Adventure International. But over time it started to branch out and bring some other games to market as well. And Wetmore decided he wanted to be part of that. He was keen to get into game design, and he'd been tinkering with computers ever since his father had come home with a Tandy TRS 80 Model 1 one day in the late 70s. And so Scott Adams loaned Wetmore an Atari 800 because Wetmore felt that the Atari 8-bit series was the most appropriate for the vision he had for what he wanted to achieve. Preppy ended up being very well received, a lot of people's favourite game on the Atari 8-bit, and quite technically impressive for the time as well. It featured up to 28 colours on screen at once and has a very iconic version of Dvorak's humoresque number 7 in G-flat major as its backing music. There was also a sequel in 1983 which featured radically different gameplay, which people don't tend to talk about quite as much, but I've always been fond of as well, so it will probably come up on this series at some point. So enough of that, let's go play Preppy. Okay, here we are with Preppy by Russ Wetmore from Adventure International in 1982, which, as I said in the intro, was a division of Scott Adams' company. And Scott Adams was very well known for being one of the people who started popularising text adventures in the 8-bit era. So he put out quite a bunch of very well-known text adventures in that period, including some Marvel licensed ones. There was an Incredible Hulk one, there was I think a Fantastic Four one, and a Spider-Man one, I want to say, as well. But over time he sort of broadened his remit a bit with Adventure International into publishing a bunch of other games as well. So we got Preppy here is one of those. Rally Speedway, which we saw a while back, was also one of those as well. So yeah, there were some really great games came out from this, from that little arrangement he had going on. And this game specifically is one of the more well-known and beloved games on the Atari 8-bit, I think. I don't believe you can get it anywhere else as well, so it's one of those games that is actually unique to Atari 8-bit as well. So let's play. Now, if you've not come across Preppy before, you may well think, oh, it's a Frogger ripoff. And it sort of is. But it's also kind of its own thing as well, because rather than just trying to get from the bottom of the screen to the top repeatedly like you do in Frogger, in Preppy your goal is to retrieve golf balls. So each level has one or more golf balls lying around that you have to go and retrieve and then bring them back to the bottom. As the main character, Wadsworth Overcash, I believe his name is, if I remember correctly. He is a preppy, as the name suggests, and he's working a job on the local golf course in an attempt to make even more money. And his job is retrieving the golf balls that various people have hit into places that they probably shouldn't have been hit. And so it's your task to ensure that he does so safely. So there's a lot of really interesting things going on in this game. The control scheme is a little bit different from Frogger. If you play Frogger, you'll know that you move very much in a sort of tile-based manner in Frogger, whereas you have pretty free movement in this. You do have some considerations while you're doing that, though. You'll notice that when you walk sideways, you sort of get this strange perspective of him walking sideways like that. And that makes his sprite... I actually don't think it actually makes him any wider, but it makes him feel wider. So you have to be a bit careful when you're doing that. And when you get onto the river section, like we've done here... Did I take that first one back? I've completely forgotten. When you get onto the river section there, you have to actually jump by pressing the fire button. And in that situation, you do move like you do in Frogger. I didn't take it back. There we go. Good job I checked. Because you can only do one at a time. Yeah, you do move by a tile at a time on this one, except when you're moving sideways. You see, you can still move freely when you're going sideways. But jumping from boat to boat, or boat to log, or boat to the inevitable crocodile in the later stages... Yeah, you have to time that very carefully, because not only are you moving by tile, there's also quite a noticeable delay between his winding up for the jump and actually making the jump as well. So you have to get a real feel for that rhythm. And this is how Preppy works. So the game gradually increases in complexity and challenge factor with each stage. So it gets slightly faster. You get different hazards. You'll notice that some of the lawnmowers down at the bottom have been replaced by those golf carts now. And the actual pace of the game is increased now as well. So the actual movement of Wadsworth is faster now as well. So that means you need to be a little bit more careful with your movement. I just want to check you can't pick up more than one at once. I'm pretty sure you can't, but I just want to make sure. No, you can't. Okay, so you have to take one back before you can go and get the next one. And so that means you need to keep a bit of an eye on your time limits while you're playing. You don't take too long. I've wasted a lot of time with that little exploration there, so we better hurry up and get that last one. I think we should make it. But yeah, this is a really fun game. This is probably one of the earlier games that I remember playing on the Atari 8-bit. Oh, there's another one. Bollocks. Gonna run out of time. No, no. Didn't even see that one over on the right. I'm an idiot. Do we have to do the whole level again? That is the question. But yeah, this is one of the Atari 8-bit games I have pretty vivid early memories of. Just because it's such a lovely looking game. I mean, look at those vibrant, bright colours. The sheer number of colours on screen at once. And like I say, there's points in this game where there's 28 colours on screen at once, which is more than the Atari was supposed to be able to do. I've talked a little bit in the past about a common trick in Atari programming that was known as display list interrupts, which is basically where you could split the screen into slices as you went down the vertical refresh of the screen. So basically stripes of the screen you could put in different graphics modes, or what you could do, as is the case here, is you could put them in the same graphics mode but with a different colour palette. And that allows you to achieve all sorts of cool effects. And when you consider that this was basically Russ Wetmore's first game on the Atari 8-bit, as I say in the intro, he was loaned an Atari 8-bit to make this game by Scott Adams. And previously he'd just been tinkering with that TRS-80 that his father had brought home. And for him to immediately demonstrate such a mastery of such a fundamental and iconic part of Atari 8-bit programming is pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable, really. Because there are sort of veterans of Atari development who weren't capable of putting out a game that looked and sounded this good. So for him to do this as his first commercially released game on Atari 8-bit is kind of remarkable, really. Putting everybody else to shame. Extra life. Very nice. But that's sort of the world it was back in the day. Because these systems were new and exciting... Oh no! Don't jump on the alligator's mouth. Because these systems were new and exciting and still largely unproven in the early days, everyone was sort of competing to show off what they were capable of doing with them. And that sort of competitiveness between developers and publishers and that sort of thing to really show the Atari 8-bit at its best. And I'm sure the same went on with the Spectrum and the Commodore 64 and the Amstrad as well, but my primary contact with that sort of side of culture was through the Atari 8-bit. And it's even sort of stretched over to hobbyist programmers as well. Like, if you look at the stuff that ended up published in magazines like Page 6 and Atari User and that sort of thing, most of those were making use of fancy technical effects that allowed you to use these different graphics modes, or use more sprites than the Atari was normally capable of, or do all sorts of fancy, clever effects with, damn it, with graphics and sound. Yeah, the Atari 8-bit was a really very capable machine in a lot of ways. There are aspects where its rivals outstripped it, like the Commodore 64's SID chip is regarded as sort of better for sound these days, and it's certainly a more flexible sound chip, I think, but I've always had a real soft spot for the distinctive sound that the Pokey chip in the Atari 8-bit makes. Graphically, the Atari 8-bit and the Commodore 64 were certainly capable of stuff on a par with each other. But in the case of multi-format games, the Commodore 64 version often ended up looking slightly better. It's because I think people were just a little bit better at taking advantage of the Commodore 64's capabilities, or perhaps it was easier to take advantage of the Commodore 64's capabilities. I don't know the details of it, but I do know if you look at multi-format games, like if you look at the shoot-'em-up Zybex, which we covered a while back on this series, the Atari 8-bit version is great. But if you look at the Commodore 64 version, there's much more sort of colour on screen. The Atari 8-bit version takes a sort of monochrome approach where it uses lots of shades of the same colour, whereas the Commodore 64 version has lots of different colours on screen, which provides two very distinct looks for that same game, which is nice. It makes them both worth playing and exploring. But I sometimes wonder how much of that side of things on Atari 8-bit was people not quite having figured out the best way to do things on that platform compared to others. But as I've said at other points on this series as well, one of the things I like about returning to these old systems is the fact that they were genuinely unique. If you look at the modern gaming systems now, if you look at an Xbox Series X and a PlayStation 5, there's very little to distinguish between the two of them. Yes, each of them have a couple of exclusive games, but in most cases, those games look very similar to one another. And at the same time, they look very similar to what the PC is capable of as well. There's not a lot unique about those platforms anymore, whereas back in this age, every system had its own unique capabilities. Every system had its own things that it was good at, its own things that it was weaker at, and its own ways that developers would compensate for those weaknesses in some cases. And Preppy here is a really good example of the Atari 8-bit at its best, really. Showing what it's capable of. Lots of things moving around on screen at once, moving very smoothly. Some slick, smooth arcade action with some good quality music playing in the background, which the sound effects don't appear to interfere with. And some really fun arcade-style gameplay. So yeah, I have tons of fond memories of this game. Oddly enough, I have really fond memories of the font used in this game. Like, this was by no means the only game that used this specific font on the Atari 8-bit. In fact, I think Russ Wetmore did a couple of other games that used the same font for the score and lives display at the top of the screen, but it's just a very cheerful font that I've always been very fond of. And one that I associate with the Atari 8-bit once again. So yeah, lots of nostalgia for this game. Lots and lots of lovely nostalgia for this game. And playing it now, it still plays really well today. So if you are interested in exploring the Atari 8-bits library for yourself and you're not sure where to start, this is a great place to start. Because it's a game you don't need to take a lot of time to learn either. If you know how to play Frogger, you know how to play this game mostly. You just need to familiarise yourself with the slight differences between Frogger and this game, such as the jumping across the river like this, and the whole structure of collecting things and then coming back to the beginning. But fundamentally, it's still that same quick, agile, dodging action that Frogger is known for, while being its own distinct and unique thing. Alright, level 5 done. I think the next level is the one that we messed up on last time, wasn't it? Oh, no. Don't think we got this far last time. Because there is a giant frog. That looks suspiciously like the one in Frogger. See, Wetmore knew exactly what he was doing with this game. I'd forgotten that was in there. I remember that Preppy 2 actually had frogs as its main antagonists. But I'd forgotten that the frog actually put in an appearance in this one as well. That's hilarious. I love it. But again, you see that lovely sort of technical mastery going on. That frog is a big sprite, and it's moving completely independently of everything else on the screen. It's not slowing anything down. Everything else is continuing to move quickly and smoothly. It's just a real example of how to master development for the Atari platforms. So good job, Russ Wetmore. Level 7. I'm scared. Oh, the crocodiles are snapping now. And the frog's coming for me. And look at the speed those logs are going at. Oh my god. Right. Oops! Missed. I suspect it's all going to be over on this stage. But I'm doing alright. I was never very good at this back in the day. Like, I used to get quite genuinely nervous about a lot of the hazards in this game. Whoops. I'm going to time that badly. Especially those golf carts for some reason. I'm not sure why they made me so nervous, but they did. I think because the shape of them from the top-down perspective that you've got here made them look like drills. Oh, you can't jump on the crocodile at all while its mouth's open. Okay, that changes everything. Well, it doesn't. It changes how we interact with the crocodile. But let's bear that in mind this time, huh? Right, come on. I got this time. I got this. Let's get on the other side of the frog. Give us time to maneuver if we need to. They're about to open their mouths, obviously. Come on. There we go. Come on, I got work to do. Ugh. It's just nerve-wracking. I don't like it. Yeah, I'm starting to feel that old fear. Old 80s arcade game anxiety. Right, hop, hop, hop. Yeah, but the timing of the jumping, as the game speeds up, your jump doesn't speed up at the same rate. So you still have to bear in mind that sort of slight delay between winding up for the jump and actually making the jump. Oh no! Is it all over? I think it's all over, isn't it? It's all over. Well, anyway, I think that's as good a place as any to leave that. That is Preppy, an all-time favourite of mine on the Atari 8-bit, even if it does provoke serious feelings of anxiety, just as it always used to when I was a kid. But yeah, definitely a classic for the Atari 8-bit that I highly recommend checking out if you're interested in exploring the Atari 8-bit's library and have never come across it before. So, Preppy by Russ Wetmore from 1982 by Adventure International. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.